yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Born and dead, saved by love, count my blessing from above.
And good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, the love activist, and welcome to the Love and Stuff Community Show. Each Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are live, emanating from the Love and Stuff community page, from the heart of inside of Love and Stuff, here on Facebook. And we are also shared on the Marcus R. Holmes page and a number of groups within the Facebook community, as well as we are live on LinkedIn Live, Twitch TV, and YouTube events. So if you're on any or all of those platforms, welcome. And thank you for being with us. Would you click share right now? Click that share icon and the button, the bell, so that you can be notified for future shows. But click the share and tag 5 of your closest Facebook friends or YouTube subscribers, Twitch followers, or connections on LinkedIn, 5 of the more popular ones, to join us as we continue in this month of February with Black History Moments, still rising in Black excellence. So take a moment where you are and click share and tag somebody. Put someone's name in that share. I see that we have some folks across all platforms. Jay Hemingway is with us. Thank you so much. And I see others that have joined us across platforms. Of course, if you drop your name in the comments, it'll be my privilege to just acknowledge you, because it wouldn't be a Tuesday evening show if you didn't stop by. So click share and tag someone to join us as we continue our celebration of Black history. We will culminate that celebration on Sunday. Now, listen, we're Black 365, right? And we want to celebrate all of the things that make us uniquely Black and continue to help us rise in excellence, sometimes even through harrowing experiences. So we're 365 Black, right? But this month we set aside specific time to celebrate that. And so on Sunday, we culminate with a celebration that you don't want to miss, that will include film. We've been showing film all month. It will include film, some music, and we will begin to talk with you about one of our focuses, our foci for this year, which is lift every voice and vote. It is, again, a critical year going into gubernatorial races around the country here in the US. And we want to make sure that we do our part, that we have love, a lens on our rights to stand up, speak up, and show up to be counted. And so we hope that you will join us in doing that. There is a pledge that we will ask you to participate in, and more about that in the days to come. So click share. Thank you, Howard Moore, for joining us, and all others that are joining us, whether you are inside of Love and Stuff, where Howard Moore is. And if you go to the Love and Stuff page and click follow, you'll learn more about getting inside of Love and Stuff behind the scenes. Or if you're on LinkedIn Live with us tonight and you're watching a Black History Moment, or if you're on Twitch TV, our folks on YouTube are normally across the pond. We thank you for being up this time of the morning or in the morning of tomorrow. It's your Wednesday already. We're grateful to have each of you. And I thought I would share just a brief excerpt of the book, which for some reason is not coming out clear. Oh, there it is. The Gratefulness Journey Every Day. What are you doing in the next 30 days to transform your life? When I was thinking about history and thinking about the greatness of people, in my book, in the almost the closing chapter, page 69, talks about, it's a short read, it's available on Amazon, says, "So I'm created in the image and likeness of God, who deposited a brain in me that seeks cues that will lead me to choose a transforming life. And once awakened to that power, I can choose to focus on deep contentment and well being, even if experiencing negative experiences and situations," which is something that people of African descent are not unfamiliar with. I can also choose to experience a state of flow where gratefulness is an automatic habit, and practicing that will increase the wealth of my life and the wealth of my relationships, even when extreme adversity is present, even in the face of tragedy, even while saying goodbye to the people I love most. I now leave it to you to enliven your journey. And so that's from the Gratefulness Journey Every Day, which you can get on Amazon. I know it's my virtual background that might be cutting it off, so I'm trying to put it right in front of me. There it is. The Gratefulness Journey Every Day. What are you doing in the next 30 days to transform your life? And I want you to think about that as we're talking about Black History Month, that God, the Creator, has created in you an indomitable spirit, a resilience that you can make it through anything. And history has proven that the people that have come before you were able to make it through anything. And so, as we continue to focus on the rich contributions from people of African descent, people who have populated our fair country, African Americans. We started out this month talking about poetry and those that were seminal in many parts of the poetic movement of African Americans, and from the Harlem Renaissance to the Black Arts Movement. We did an entire focus on the Black Arts Movement. And many of those writers and some of those playwrights who had a lot of political ideologies that they were espousing through their work. How arts has always been, especially for African Americans, but globally, but it has always been a medium, a vehicle by which people expressed their social and socio-political beliefs. And so we saw that in the 60s and 70s in the Black Arts Movement, that a number of people in those movements, that those folks used their platform to speak about the concerns and issues of their day and time. And so, where you see what people call period pieces and socially awakened pieces are not new in the African American diaspora. They are part and parcel of our fabric, of our history, that we have gone to our gifts, our talents, our genius, and use them as a voice. And that's not like what we're going to be asking many of you to do as we come to the close of this month. We want it to be front of mind that your vote speaks, that you have a voice, and not only in the ballot box, that you have a voice in your community forums. You have a voice for civic engagement where you are locally, in your town, in your city, in your state, in your county. And whether or not you are awakened to it, you have a powerful voice that once aligned with other like voices and sometimes other different voices, that you're able to wield great influence and make great change in the area in which you live. Sure, we want to see what's happening on the world stage and see what Putin is doing with Ukraine and see what all of the factors that go into the unrest, civic, social, political unrest that's happening around the world. And we do have some great stake in that and some great influence in that. But the greatest influence I submit to you that you have is right where you live, right in your community, right in your church, right in the schools where your children go or your neighbors' children go, right in the stores, right where you are, the elected judges in your area, the elected mayor and aldermen, or whatever the elected official titles are, city managers, that you have a voice. And we want in this year to help you not only find your voice or be awakened to it, but to use it for the good causes that you truly believe in. And so in this Black History Month, we've been trying to be intentional about talking about the voice that people have used to make a difference in the world as they knew it and to impact the world as they wanted to see it. I now deputize you to join us in doing that very same thing. Maybe you don't have the poet's pen or the singer's mic. Maybe you don't have the guitar or you don't have the piano to play, but you have a voice, and use it as an instrument to show up in a world that needs to hear from you. I'm Marcus Holmes, and I am excited. Our guest will be here momentarily. He is no stranger to the Love and Stuff community. He is a noted historian, preacher extraordinaire, and educator, and he's doing groundbreaking work with young men, African American men mainly, that are in high school to help them begin to uh, envision a better self, a better future, a powerful future for themselves, and to become interactively engaged in that outcome. He hails from Detroit, Michigan, but he is now living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which may be familiar to many of you relative to the Tulsa massacre that happened many years ago. And he was on some time ago talking about that very massacre and sharing with us insights and giving us insights from where things are today on the grounds there in Tulsa. And so I'm excited that he will be joining us momentarily. And while he is preparing to join, I want to remind those of you that may be watching, have watched before, and you just haven't had the opportunity to do it, and maybe to introduce to some other folks the opportunity to join us inside of Love and Stuff. So, inside of Love and Stuff is a brand new group that we've created because we're meeting people in the Love and Stuff community of almost 4,000 people, and but not really meeting people. So inside the Love and Stuff gives people an opportunity to come inside, get to know the love activists a little bit more, and to get to interact with some of the mainstays that are in the Love and Stuff who you've seen on this platform present, from our brand ambassador, Richard Dickey Mason, who, I'm sorry, ladies, he's not quite available. I have to explain that to you inside of Love and Stuff. To Aria Moody, an actress whose career is just taking off, and she is available, at least as of yesterday, she was. And so many others in between, from teachers to preachers, from housewives to moms to dads to engineers to entrepreneurs to solopreneurs, all within the Love and Stuff community. And they're anxious to meet you. And in meeting you, you can join us on a journey this year, not only the journey to lift your voice and vote, but a journey to vote for yourself. This year is all about self care. And so we're on a 12-month journey that started in January with sleep and in February with eating right. Don't worry if you missed those months, we will double back to give you some information once you come and join us inside 11 Stuff. And in March, we'll be talking about exercise, about how you can get moving even if you're inside. And we have wonderful testimonies and personal statements of folks who will come share their personal stories and journeys with you in the hopes that it will inspire you. None of those results are guaranteed that you'll have the same results as someone else. So we don't want to give the attestation that you're going to have the same results as somebody else who worked out, or someone else who ate right, or someone else who got a certain amount of sleep. But you will be better on the journey for you. Really, self-care is your love and gratefulness speaking to your worthiness. You're worthy of self-care. The neglected love is self-love. We strive to love the quintessential love, God. We strive to love and receive his love and understand it. And we strive to do what he's telling us to do, to love our neighbors as ourselves. But the baseline of self isn't right because we neglect ourselves trying to love others. And so this year we wanted to be intentional about self-love. And so we're excited and hopeful to see you on the journey of self-love. And I am excited. Our guest is soon to arrive into our green room. And why don't you take a moment and click share? Again, tag 5 of your closest friends, 5 of your more popular ones to join us. I believe he is coming in the room. All right. He has arrived on time. I love it. I love it. And as I stated earlier, Darren Williams is a part of our Love and Stuff community, a very valuable part. All of you that are in the Love and Stuff community are valuable. And Darren joins that ranks. Uh, he is a noted preacher, a noted educator, a noted historian. And I am so grateful that he made time to be with us and to share from this. Imagine the vault just swinging open and all of this rich, valuable history and wealth of knowledge pours out. And that's what you can expect in these moments with him. I'm so excited to have him with us. Give us some likes and loves, whether you're with us on LinkedIn or Love and Stuff or Marcus Our Homes or Twitch TV, YouTube events. Some likes and loves, please, for Darren Williams. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Brother Marcus. You doing all right tonight?
I am doing excellent. And how are you?
I'm great, especially because this is Black History Month and African Americans, and of course, including you in this platform, is announcing and saying loud and advertising the importance of having African American Heritage Black History Month. So thank you, sir. Let me thank you for making this important for Love and Stuff.
I feel like it wouldn't be right, Darren Williams, not to. I feel like if there is ever to be a celebration of history, it must include, as part of the record, the contributions of African Americans and persons of African descent. The record is not complete without it. The record of love, of sacrifice. Our love story is not complete. There are chapters missing if we don't have what is in the record of African Americans. And I know a lot of our history is oral tradition. Some of it's not written, but to where we can be a trumpet to write it or sing it or speak it or say it, I just believe the record is not complete without it, our history, and persons like you who handle our history with such care. So I'm going to get out of your way and I'll be in the background listening anxiously to learn something new as always. Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
Bless you. Again, thank you so much. Love and Stuff. Good to be with you all tonight. Forgive my lighting, shading situation. I thought I'd kind of solve this stuff. But what you might be able to get out of this, that I am not a techie in any fashion whatsoever, but I'm going to get better. I'm going to get a place to be at and a setup where things are going to be okay. We're not going to worry about it tonight, though, because we're moving on. As I said to Brother Marcus, commending him for the very, very important way that he makes Black History Month a part of what he does. I think that for all of us, the whole importance in ways, and he said it in his segment, towards the end of his segment, that he was deputizing the rest of us, that he was charging the rest of us to be ones to tell and to say, to remember and to learn what the history of African and African American people are. Because the truth is this, again, as Brother Marcus says, that there is a whole history that the balance of humanity is dependent upon in order for us to be who God made us to be. African American history has been relegated to some sideshow. It's been written out. It's been oppressed, and it's been hidden. But what I believe is going to work to make us as a race, a human race, to really fully be human. One of the first parts of that is to return African and African American history to the respectful column of history, that the wholeness of who we are as a people, and I mean the world, the people of the world, is gonna be dependent upon how we treat what is the first history of the world. James Small, activist and expert African history, African American history professor, says that 90% of world history is African history. And the African, he says, was heavily involved in the other 10%. And what he's saying in that is that what we have heard and what we have learned and seen and been presented to as history is a really small measure of what history really, really, really is. And so to get to what the understanding of humanity, and that's why history is important, because history is the story of humanity. And for us to know and understand what's happening with us now, where we are, why we are where we are, you got to understand, you got to know why, where we came from. And if you only tell a part of that story, or if only certain people tell that story, it doesn't get told well. It doesn't get told right. I heard today the quote Maya Angelou says, "The worst story is the one that hasn't been told." And I'll tag that and say that it should be told. It has to be told of necessity by those to whom the story belongs. Because every people has a right to know their ancestral history. And for a full understanding, all of us need to know the story. What I want to do, just a couple of ideas that I have. I responded some time ago, actually a couple of years ago, to some white friends of mine who asked about why we need to have Black history. And it was a complaint that they actually had, that how long will this happen, and what is it about to be having Black history? I responded to them this way by saying, because the world is still confused by the popularly dubious reinterpretation of history that wrote out the overwhelming import, and parenthetically that means as meaning or significance, the imprint and impact of the African and those from the diaspora, and only sprinkled a few stories across the pages of record, mostly in negative and powerless images, while exaggeratedly embellishing the image of the European. That's the first reason we still need Black history. Number two is because the world is not aware yet that the origins of humanity, culture, and civilization are from deep within the African continent. And as Dr. John Henry Clark put it, the African gave the world its first humanity. And I'm convinced the African will give it its last. The second reason we still need Black history. And the third, because the false supremacy of white history and culture has been and is taught and reinforced every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every week of every month of every year. And in fact, is required for everyone to learn. Also, because that history and cultural supremacy is normalized and set as a standard by being programmed into nearly every system, institution, structure, policy, program, and practice that exists in America. It gives the mystifying impression that it has fathered and has always led the world in all things. Knowing Black history corrects that fallacy. And so we must continue to observe and tell Black history until the full scope of history is recognized, taught, and valued in its proper content and context, the respectful column of history. And until the protests of those objectified by latent and blatant racism and racists and the denial of their dignity, identity, and expression is acknowledged and appropriately addressed. Also, we must continue to have Black History Month until the world knows that the capture, imprisonment, and export of Africans from the motherland was not the beginning of Black history, but that history is literally thousands of years old, older. And the enslavement of the African was instead an interruption of our history, not the beginning. Finally, we must teach Black history until the African the world over is so imbued and inculcated with the sense and knowledge of self to rise from the intoxicating slumber that has stifled, confined, and diminished us, to rise and become again a people, that people, the people, to give the world its last humanity. Unrelentingly, unashamedly, and unapologetically affirm. And now, I guess I may put a disclaimer in there that that these views expressed here are my own and necessarily don't at all represent the views of Love and Stuff or Brother Marcus. These are Darren Williams's views. That was my response to why we still need Black history. And I think too, as long as the question is asked, as long as people have that thought, as long as people are saying or wondering why we need Black history, that is the proof that we actually need to. I want to move into lifting up a part of history that is not so pleasant at all. It's not pretty at all, because of course the story of the African America, the story of Black people here, is a wonderful and terrible story. And so there are parts, of course, we talk about all the time. And I want to end on a higher note, a happier note. But at first I want us to see and to feel part of what actually isn't history in the past, but is a continuing reality for African Americans today, just as the decision of the three men who murdered Ahmaud Arbery. They had already received life sentences, state of Georgia. They went on federal trial today, or at least the verdict for the federal trial. They're sentencing for that. In the hate crimes case, all three found guilty on all charges and have also a life sentence in the federal prison system for having murdered Ahmaud Arbery. And what we should see in that, and not just him, it doesn't stop there, that part of what is the darkest part of the experience for African Americans, that kind of violence, that kind of brutality, that kind of murder and lynching, is part and parcel to what our American experience has been and still is. And so just momentarily, I want to touch that, lift up the idea, the concept, the dark memory of lynching, the lynching of African American people, and what that's been about. The first thing, though, that I have to say as I address this, and I've 2 weeks ago, the subject for both my Oklahoma history classes and my multicultural studies classes was on lynching. Oklahoma history class, there's a specific experience that Oklahoma has with the lynching of African Americans. But I started by telling them, and I say to us here, that issue of lynching itself has to do with a perceived crime having been committed. It may be a crime, verily, or it may be perceived by a group of people that a person has committed a crime, and it is their execution of judgment and punishment on that person. And so lynching takes place in the United States. At first, it is not exclusively African Americans who are lynched. White people and African Americans at the beginning were both, I guess, objectified or subjected to that type of treatment and punishment. In the United States, horse thieving, being a highwayman, which is actually somebody who waits in ambush for somebody on the highway, and whether they fake having a flat tire or car trouble or whatever, and then they ambush the person and kill them or rob them. And of course, other crimes that were committed, all of those were dealt with by vigilante mobs who executed justice, white people and Black people. But an interesting phenomena occurs in the United States around the early 1860s, 1861, that the lynching of white people begins to decrease in a very dramatic way. And as the 1860s progress, the lynching of African American people explodes in a very dramatic fashion. And so there is an opposite juxtaposition that happens there. Statistics of Oklahoma during briefly that time period, 1860s to 1920s, I'm sorry, just previous to the 1860s, of the 109 people who were lynched, 76 of them were white people. And then 24, I believe it is, were African American, and the numbers go down from there. But that changes in the decade of the 1860s. And not just in Oklahoma, but all across the United States of America, especially in the southeastern part of the state. There is this vigilante justice that is largely a response to the Emancipation Proclamation, which is issued 1863, that now officially delegitimizes the enslavement of African people. And of course, that needs to be talked about, because that document does not end slavery effectively, because the President Lincoln at the time only includes those states that were in opposition to the Union, those who had seceded or pulled away from the Union. That's where he freed the slaves. He didn't even mention the border states, which also had slaves. Here's the North, here's the South. Between there were what was called border states. He didn't even mention those who did have slaves. He didn't touch those states. He said only in the South. What is the problem? He didn't even have the authority to free the enslaved people in the South, because those states had already seceded. But again, that's something for another time, another discussion. But the lynching increases exorbitantly at this point of the issuance of Emancipation Proclamation. We've heard stories, we've seen images, and what we don't understand is that worse than just the brutality itself that was part of lynching was the condition of spectacle lynching. Spectacle lynching has to do with the fact where you take this instance of vigilante justice, where you imposing racial justice on a person, but you make it an event where people are invited to. Dr. Carol Anderson, I have a video clip, a brief clip I want us to see, where she describes a lynching and the effect of it, of Cleo Wright. But in spectacle lynching of Claude Neal, she describes the fact that this lynching had flyers print up, that announcement in churches that tickets were sold to invite people to come to see Claude Neal lynched. And if that weren't enough, and we've seen this is how we know, there's the documented evidence that this is true, that photographs were taken at many of these events, these spectacle lynching events. And to add injury to insult, or insult to injury, whichever way is best, those photographs were made into postcards and mailed out to the relatives and friends of those who had attended, so that they could see and have a part in this spectacle lynching event. Let me play Dr. Carol Anderson's recounting of the lynching of Cleo Wright. Can we cue that? Thank you. It's about a 5-minute long video.
Shortly after Pearl Harbor, it's the day that will live in infamy, December 7th, 1941. Well, in January 1942, when the U.S. is fully into the Second World War, this war against supremacy, this war for democracy, this war for human rights. In Sikeston, Missouri, in January 1942, you have the lynching of Cleo Wright. Now, the way that this began is that Cleo Wright had broke into a white woman's home and attempted to rape her. She fought him off. Great. And then she's yelling, get him, get him, get him. The cops come. The cops are running after Cleo. They catch him. He fights. He slashes one of the police officers. They fight back, they shoot him. He gets about 8 bullet wounds in him. He's almost good and done for. Now the thing is that, but he's still alive. So they try to okay, I guess we got to get him some medical care. So they take him to the hospital. Well, it's a whites only hospital, because medical care in the United States in the 1940s is Jim Crowed. And there are no black hospitals in the United States, particularly in the Boot Hill of Missouri. So they take him to the white hospital, they begin to plug him up, but, and put a little gauze here, a little gauze there, but the doctor's very clear. Okay, now he's black. He can't stay here. So we've done the best we can do. So I don't know where you're gonna take him, but he's not staying here overnight. And so they try to find places. They eventually take him back to the jail. But by the time they get him back to the jail, the lynch mob has formed. They are absolutely incensed, because when you begin to think about it, this is a black man who has tried to rape a white woman and then has slashed a police officer. I mean, he has violated every last single code in Jim Crow America. Now, you would also think that, okay, now he's in jail. He can go through the criminal justice system if he happens to survive his wounds. But that wasn't enough for the mob. When you hear the statements from the lynch party, they describe, it is time, they've gotten a little uppity. It is time to put them back in their place. And so the lynch mob storms the jail, pulls Cleo Wright out of this jail. And again, this is a man that's got 8 bullet wounds in him. They tie him to the back bumper of a car. Then they take off driving into the black neighborhood. And you can imagine this body riddled with 8 bullets bouncing along the rough roads of Sikeston, Missouri. They stop the car in the black neighborhood near a black church where folks are in there on Sunday morning singing praises to God. They cut Cleo Wright's body loose from that bumper. Somehow he is still alive. They then take 5 gallons worth of gasoline, pour it over him, and light a match. Witnesses describing one, the roasting carcass wafting through the smell coming into the black church. Black folks looking around going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And Cleo Wright raising his hand to God, begging for mercy, the mercy of death, to take him out of that agony. Now that's bad enough. When the grand jury holds its hearing to figure out whether somebody can be charged for this. I mean, you stormed a jail, you tied a man to the back of a bumper, you drove miles into another neighborhood, then you deliberately went and got 5 gallons worth of gasoline, and you poured it over him, and then you lit a match. Clearly something has really gone wrong here. The grand jury came back and said, no crime has been committed here because he was already dying. Now, when the NAACP investigated this, what the NAACP said is Cleo Wright and all of the Cleo Wrights before him are indicative of the lack of human rights for African Americans in the United States, the lack of education. They said, because what is happening is that when blacks were imported into the boot hill of Missouri to pick cotton, the point was to keep them as barely educated and as impoverished as possible so that they could be a cheap, exploitable labor pool that would have absolutely no rights. And Cleo Wright, in fact, best exemplifies that.
The proceeding.
That is a story of the kind of lynchings that took place in America. I said, beginning this, at least this piece, that the importance of that for us is because we are still living in an era where lynching of African Americans are taking place. I pulled up the article, won't be able to show it. 2018, just outside of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 2 African Americans were gunned down by 4 white people, woman included in this group, dismembered and their bodies thrown into a lake outside of Oklahoma City, 2018. And in case you don't realize it, America was put on notice around the world in late March, early April of 2020, when on our television screens, we watched Derek Chauvin and 2 other officers for the Minneapolis Police Department with their bodies pressed, their knees pressed into the body of George Floyd with Chauvin's knee on his neck. We have the 8 minutes, 23 seconds, 24-second thing. In actuality, 29 seconds, the time frame from beginning to end that Derek Chauvin is applying this chokehold with his knee in George Floyd's neck. Whether we realize it or not, that is a lynching, and we all saw it. And so I said to us that this is a dark part of our history, but we cannot get to the better of ourselves unless we address and deal with what's the worst of what's happened to us too. The story doesn't end there, though. There is in Montgomery, Alabama, what is called the Equal Justice Initiative. Attorney Brian Stevenson, an incredible brother. And I won't even talk about all of what he is and has done, but he has opened up and built this Equal Justice Museum. And if that link can be put up there, where it is dedicated to the victims of lynching African Americans in the United States of America. And what he has done, I don't know if we'll get to see the image. I did put, yeah, there it is. It's the Equal Justice Museum. And he has hanging from the ceiling these wooden pillars that are hanging from the ceiling that are representative of, and it's a full number of the people who have, African Americans who have been counted to have been lynched in the United States of America. And then there is another display where soil, those are the things that are hanging. Those are representative of the people who have been lynched in the United States, African Americans. And then there's another display where he has the soil, jars full of soil taken from the ground, one from every state in the United States where people were lynched there. And what he has asked to happen is that each of those townships, cities, or states would also do some type of memorial to the memory of the people who have been lynched in their cities and in their states. It's a wonderful thing. I'll actually be going. My plan was to go next year. I was going on a Black History driving trip last summer. Ended up teaching summer school all summer. But this summer, I actually will go to the Equal Justice Museum to be able to see that firsthand. And we are at 8:16 now. Some indication. Let me just touch on the last piece I want to touch on. I said I want to end on a different note, a higher note, a happier note. I'm sure that artists and art in terms of music, Black music, has already been addressed. I want to say something from one other standpoint, and this will be brief. There are 5 genres of music from which every music that we have and here in America actually comes from. These 5 genres of music are all created in America, all created by African American people. And again, let me say that what we have as American music is owing to these 5 types of music, that music. And it's difficult to tell which was actually first, but the spirituals and the blues are 2 types of music created by African American people. One, of course, of a religious source, of a soul, of a spirit reaching out to God in 2 fashions. Number one, in order to worship, to adore, to celebrate God, but in a second fashion, as a supplication, crying out to God for the condition that African Americans find themselves in. And then the blues in the social sphere. It's the same thing with blues. Blues is an aspiration of reaching out beyond circumstance. It's telling a story. It's talking about what is happening in the circumstance, but it's a reaching beyond to free oneself. And then, of course, it is that lived experience, that crying out about what has been done. Those 2 are the formations of what else becomes Black music. Jazz follows out of those. Jazz, however, is the only art form created in America, but it is also credited, by musicologists and historians. Jazz holds the singular distinction of being the only art form created in America, and of course, created by African Americans. Now, what you'll hear, though, is my quarrel with that designation, because as well as jazz, both blues and spirituals are created by African American people. And then we have R&B music. Rhythm and blues is a music that is created by African American people. And very carefully, as we follow the progression of what is rhythm and blues, what we find is that what is American popular music in all its forms, dealing with rock and roll, dealing with all the other forms of music that others in America came up with and began to play, all owing to rhythm and blues music. And so then the 5th, we have created in America hip hop, what many know as rap music. But from those 5 genres, all created by African American people, there is quite the note that should be made about the importance of the music of African American people. And one of the things it's one of those aspirational thoughts at first, but then on the other hand, it's one of those, oh my God, imagine that. The story of lynching that I talk about prior to talking about music actually becomes part of the cradle and seedbed for all of the expression of the music made by African American people. That it is from what is our triumph, yes, and joy, but our pain and from the pressure on us, that the expressions that come out of what has been sang, what has been played by African Americans, that experience, even of lynching, has lent itself to the creativity and art of African American people. But the question for me, what plagues me, because of everything that we have done as African Americans, the greatness in athletics and the sports arena, the greatness in music, the greatness in science, the greatness in technology, the greatness in arts and philosophy, and you name the field, and there are African Americans at the top of every field that you can imagine. Here's the plague: that if we have achieved those levels of greatness, having experienced the depths of degradation and pain that we have, what in the world could we have achieved if we never suffered the enslavement and oppression that was visited upon our people? I think about that, and it plagues me to just consider that had we been free and remained what the African was like on the continent of Africa prior to the being taken away, invasion and taken away as prisoner of war around the world, what could we have achieved as a continually free people? And I'm going to conclude again with Dr. John Henry Clarke's quote. Clarke says, in looking at how old the history of Africa and African people are, and looking at the depths and how much Africa and African people have experienced and suffered, he realizes, or at least in his mind, he understands that how much has been applied to African Americans as suffering and pain speaks to the intention of, in his mind, the greatness again of what Africa and African people will be. And he adds to that consideration that Africa gave the world its first civilization. And I am convinced, John Henry Clarke says, that it will give the world its last. Let's look to see, as we continue to study Black History Month, how true will Dr. Clarke's words be. I appreciate being able to share in Love and Stuff tonight in this platform for Black History Month. And let me play this last video going out to talk about what this music has been, Negro Spiritual, which connects itself to the continent of Africa. Take a listen to this, Wintley Phipps. It's about probably 6 minutes of this we want to play. It's 8 minutes long, so we'll see how much.
This has been an awesome night, hasn't it, everyone? Just wonderful. How many of you like Negro spirituals? An old black lady down south showed me something about the Negro spirituals, and I want to share it with you. You know, the black folk down south had more sense by accident than some of us have on purpose. You know what I mean? You didn't hear what I said. I heard an old black lady say, "Son, if the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it." Think about that for a minute. But did you know, she said to me, did you know just about all Negro spirituals are written on the black notes of the piano? This is absolutely true. You can go home tonight and play almost any Negro spiritual, just play the black notes on the piano. You look skeptical. Now, you can't see it out there, but I want you to watch. Watch. There are 5 black notes on the piano. And those same 5 black notes just keep recurring. And you can go home tonight and play almost any Negro spiritual, just play the black notes. Watch. You know that? Every time I feel the spirit, just black notes. Watch this. That's because the slaves didn't come to America with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's somebody else's scale, okay? All they had in their musical scale were those 5 black notes. We know it in music as the pentatonic scale. And they built the power and pathos of the Negro spiritual on 5 notes. When you study music, you also come across what are known as white spirituals. Did you know that? And they are white composers who work with that scale. In early America, they used to call this the slave scale. And I'm going to play for you what some musicologists think is the most famous white spiritual built on the slave scale or just the black notes. Anybody tonight know who wrote that song? I heard it, a man by the name of John Newton. But do you know what John Newton did before he became a Christian? He was the captain of a slave ship. And many believe heard this melody that sounds very much like a West African sorrow chant and wrote the words Amazing Grace and set his words to a slave melody. I looked up that song. I believe God wanted that song written just the way it was written, just so that we would be reminded that as Christians, whether black or white, free or bond, in his eyes, we're all connected. We are
the
connected.
major point of what I wanted to cover has
by
been
God's
covered,
amazing grace.
even though he's going to sing a version of this that's amazing to me. And we can conclude it at whatever point.
I looked up that song in the Library of Congress. I went to the Library of Congress, I looked up that song, and wherever you see it authentically printed, you know what it says? Words, John Newton, melody, unknown. I tell the Lord, when I get to heaven, I want to meet Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but boy, I want to meet that slave called unknown. And I recorded that song the way I hear it. When I sing it, I still hear the sounds of the slave ships in the water. I want to sing it for you the way John Newton probably first heard it. coming up out of the belly of the ship. Listen.
All right. That is on YouTube. You can access that on your own to hear the rest of the song there. But let me thank you again, Love and Stuff community, for the opportunity. Brother Marcus, thank you so much, so very kindly for being the kind of innovator and influencer, you're that too, and the kind of connector and creator who have brought us Love and Stuff and then brought us all together. Thank you so much for that. Happy Black History Month, everybody.
I'm just excited. I'm telling you, every time you present Darren Williams, there is an excitement that the information just, it excites me to and inspires me to learn more and to share more. So thank you so much. A debt of gratitude we owe to you for always answering our call, short or long, how much time we give you. You always answer our call, and you're a valued part of this community. I love to hear what I think is the gap education. It's the part of the education that I think is missing. And it's why I think our world is in a place that we don't respect each other, that we don't have a modicum of civility, because we don't understand one of the great things that you said that plagues you, that I would consider a consternation of many people, and people don't understand, if not but for the extreme trials that our people have gone through and still go through, what could we have accomplished? So I think inside of every person of color, Black person of color, sits this little man that says, I wish I could disappear and you could be all of this more. But dealing with that consternation of that little man inside is something that we can hardly articulate for others to understand. When we're talking about leveling the playing field and talking about making workplaces and organizations more diverse, we just really are saying, if but not for the atrocities that our people experienced, we wouldn't have this conversation, because we far exceed in every area. We're at the top of our game in every area. Imagine how much more. And part of you might say, some people knew that, and that's the reason that some of the atrocities occurred. And that little man inside is dealing with that plague, that consternation, to be able to still rise to the occasion, if not but for, if I could say. So I love that, and I loved everything that you shared, and I hope that others like me will share this widely. And I know it's a mantra of yours, and I appreciate and elevate your voice in this community. I trust it and elevate it, because I think something that you often say to me is, we're 365 Black. We're not just relegated to a month. And I appreciate that. And I start with this month and hope to have you throughout the year to remind us, to continue to remind us, 28 days or 29 in a leap year are not enough. And neither really are 365 to really talk about the atrocities, to talk about the harrowing experiences and the triumphs that we have, and just to talk about the 5 genres that you talked about, and to even have some discourse with folks who might agree or disagree, just to really bring that forward, could fill up our entire calendar. So I applaud you for the approach, I say the meticulous approach to our history, that you handle it with such poise and grace and care. And may you be blessed for doing that, and the work that you're doing in the school system there. May you be blessed even more. But we're truly favored and treasured to have you here in the Love and Stuff community. And so thank you so much. I couldn't thank you enough. I'm going to keep trying to thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to be sharing it. And I hope anybody that's watching, and everybody that's watching, I know on YouTube caught us on the video. I think they didn't want us to play all of the video, so I stopped it. So hopefully we won't get a copyright challenge here on Facebook, but it's worth the challenge, because we want people to understand the rich legacy contributions that we've made to this country. And you can't help but think, at least I can't help but think, when I think about the rich contributions my people made, it makes me feel like I own the country too. You know, I feel proud saying I too am American, though I'm at sometimes contradiction with what that means. I too am American. So where's my slice of the pie? So we got to have some discussion back about how we have contributed so much, but the return, the dividends may not have come back to us. And, you know, people talk about reparations, but really to get your head around it, you really start at what have the contributions been? What was taken from us, right? What was forced in us to contribute, and then what's a return to the descendants of that. So I thank you so much. I don't know if you have any closing words before we go that you want to share with the community or others, because even in watching the last clip, I could tell that there were some people, I call them children from another mother and father, that looked uncomfortable. But I think it's important that people lean into this uncomfortableness so that we can all have an appreciation and understand when we're talking about America as a melting pot. There was some really hot burning oil in that pot.
Wow.
And
Absolutely so.
There was some scorching that happened, and you cannot appreciate what came out of that pot if you are eating from that pot without respecting the scorched, respecting what was discarded from the pot, or was treated as if it would be discarded. Because, you know, African Americans, we don't discard anything. We'll make hog maw, we'll make something out of it. We know how to make something out of anything. But in order to really appreciate the wealth of the pot, what the pot has brought us, you got to remember that the oil was so hot, it scorched the people who were preparing the food. Some people fell in that scorching heat and were consumed, and things were discarded. So I don't know if you have any closing words that you want to share.
Just to that, very, very expertly, very poignantly actually stated. Because if balance is going to come to humanity, the other half will have to have some feeling of what the rest have experienced. African Americans have lived with pain and shame, and the rest are going to have to be uncomfortable with feeling it for us to really get past. But this is what I wanted to say, because you have mentioned my school and my students. One of my students, when I did the videos and we first did the discussion on lynching in class, the last video ran, it was about 6 minutes. We had 3 minutes of class left. And so obviously those who would leave, they left. I had a line of students, about 12 of them, who stayed glued to the computers, to the screen, to be able to watch the rest of the video. That's 4th hour. Lunch next. 6th hour, one of the students came into the classroom and I said, "Man, what are you doing?" He's like, "I want to be in your classroom, class, Mr. Williams." Just left my class, 4th hour, then lunch. I said, "What class are you supposed to be in?" "Man, you better get to class." He's like, "Mr. Williams, I want to learn about Black people." After watching about lynching, learning about lynching, he was connected to the history of our people in a dark way, in a dark experience that made him want to learn. And so I that's very true. I believe that if we tell our story, that even how bad it is, because our young people's identity, sense of identity is so skewed and so off, but being able to connect to our history and our story can restore, can revive, or can birth in them a sense of identity. That can even happen in love and stuff. I believe it is. And thank you, Brother Marcus, and for all the kind things and the invitation.
Thank you again. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we will hear more from Darren Williams, and very proud of the work that you're doing there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with those young men and students. I think educators should be paid $1 million and a pension to match it. But we're so grateful to have you in the community. Thank you for sharing with us tonight. That was Darren Williams. And I know that you are clicking share right now for the content that he shared, and he will be back with us. But I want you to think about, as we rise in Black excellence, think about the harrowing circumstances from which we have arisen, and think about how you can connect with our journey so that we all can have an appreciation of where we have come from, where we are today, and where we're going. This has been a moment in Black history that you don't want to forget, and you want to share it. Click share. Don't forget to go to the Love and Stuff page and click the bell so that you'll be notified each Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And while you're at the Love and Stuff community page, don't forget to go under groups and click to join inside of Love and Stuff. Go with us on this 12-month self-care journey. It will do you well, and you will pursue the best you in 2022. I'm Marcus Holmes, the love activist, and if you haven't guessed it by now, I'm madly in love with the opportunity to increase the amount of love in the world, one person at a time. Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you will click share. Have a grateful evening.